Thank you for your interest, your personal interest, but also your interest in your families, your community, and the greater world. And hopefully by tonight you'll be able to see a little bit more about how you can pull back your power from a system that actually doesn't care much about you as an individual. I'm not saying the system's bad, don't get me wrong. But we as individuals have to be self-responsible, don't we, for our economic freedom, our self-interest. So hopefully tonight you'll learn a little bit about that, about how you can actually take control of your finances, and also how you can look at a bigger picture of wealth. You see, when I talk about wealth, most people immediately think money. But one of my mentors told me, he said, if you measure a person's wealth just by their money, you're missing the most important pieces. Now, what do you think they meant by that? Well, the first thing that comes to me is that wealth is not just money. Isn't it true that it's health? I mean, look, if I have all the money in the world, I'm the richest guy in the world, but I'm sick, how much comfort does that bank account really give me? Not much, right? Or if I'm very, very wealthy money-wise, but I have no friends, or I have no respect, I have no appreciation and love in my life, wouldn't that be a pretty empty existence, right? Or if I have no purpose or passion in my life, wouldn't the money alone just be empty? Right? So wealth is a picture of wealth would be much more rounded and much more complete when we talk about wealth as the whole being. And that's what I'm focusing on, and that's what I'd like to share with you tonight. So let's look at this thing called wealth, and let's look at the current state of affairs, and then maybe let's roll the clock back and look at how we got to where we are today, and then maybe roll the clock forward and see where we're going. And wouldn't it be nice if at the end of this session you had a picture of how you can use this information to create the future for yourself, to use the winning strategies that create financial wealth to build personal wealth for yourself, your family, your community, and perhaps even change the world to some small amount. Would that be helpful?
Yes.
Okay. So let's look at today's world. Now, it's no secret that we're in different times than we were even 5 years ago, 10 years ago, certainly than our parents or our grandparents. Now, what was a great strategy for our parents or our grandparents? Well, what I was taught as a young man was that I should go to school, get an education, get a job, and then I would have a retirement. And I could spend my golden years enjoying that retirement. Well, if I were to give a young person that strategy today, would I be helping them or hurting them? See, that strategy applied to the old economy, but I don't know that that's a valuable strategy for today. The average person today is going to have not just 7 jobs, but 7 careers. Wow. And some of us in the room have had multiple careers, right? And if you're like some of us, you're looking ahead and going, well, the career I'm in, I can see the end and it's not pretty because it ends up with me being out of work. When I'm out of work, I'm out of luck, and when I'm out of luck, well, that's not a pretty picture. So that advice worked, but what would we tell young people today? Well, that's not unique to have the 40-40-40 plan. You know, get a job, go to school, get an education, get a job, work 40 years, 40 hours a week, and then retire on probably about 40% of what you need to have a decent life. That worked for a while, but before that, there were other strategies that worked for those periods. And we'll talk about those in a few minutes. We can look at those and why they worked, and we can look at the future and say, what strategy will work today and tomorrow? But let's look at today's economy, because it's no secret that we're in, again, different times, but also I would say troubling times. Everybody's heard of the Great Recession, right? Remember in 2008, there was this big crash and a contraction worldwide. The global economy is so interlocked today that if somebody sneezes over here, somebody over here gets pneumonia. And who are the big actors today? Well, it's always been Europe, of course, Japan, the EU, Europe, America, But what's the big one now today?
China.
And it's no secret that China is a communist dictatorship that adopted capitalism as an economic model, but it's still not the political model, is it? So they've created what we call red capitalism. Now, what we have to see is that this is a new animal on the planet. Red capitalism's never really been tried before. So it's a great experiment. And I love experiments, except when the outcome can hurt us. So let's look at this thing, red capitalism. Now, China's had a rapid growth. They have a huge population to start with, but they had the government behind creating massive growth. And what it was about, among other things, was a big population base that would work inexpensively. They moved to the cities along the coast from the farms, and they had an increase in their lifestyle, in their economic fortunes. That worked great for a while because that was the low-cost producer in the world, the cheapest labor. But guess what? It's caught up with them. Now 20, 30 years later, they're not the cheapest labor. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of upward pressure on their wages. They're not the low-cost producers. There's a lot of competition from other countries for them. Africa, Southeast Asia, India, other places. The point is this: the biggest competition didn't even exist 50 or 100 years ago. That's called automation. It's called robotics. It no longer matters how cheap your labor is because you can get a machine to do all this stuff. 24 hours a day, 365, no sick pay, no retirement benefits, no nothing. And that's changing the landscape. We'll talk about some of the other dynamics of why that old model of wealth creation no longer fits and how you can take advantage of this. But let's look at our Western economy. What's going on in our societies? What's going on here? Well, one thing we're seeing is what? Unemployment, underemployment, misemployment, right? How many of you, again, would give a young person the advice, go to school, get a expensive education, and come out and get a job? Now, I'm not against education as per se. You know, I've worked in that world. I know the value of it, but I also know that what we've done largely today is we've substituted specific trade education for a general education that originally was intended to teach people how to think. But I would go so far, no offense to anybody watching this that's an educator, I would say our modern education system does not teach people how to think. It teaches them how to obey and to take in things and put them back out on command. Now that's valuable in a factory environment or an old economy work environment. That's great. But in today's economy, that's not going to cut it. Because today's economy requires us to be more of who we are, not robots. Robots are we can't compete with the robots. So why do we have a robotic, expensive education and come out expecting to work in the new economy? So I'm just trying to impress you. Again, I'm not taking the education system down. It's great. But we have to apply it correctly to get the benefit of it. And here's the hard part. Young people are promised today, and middle-aged and older people, that if we retool or re-educate ourselves, which often costs a lot of money, that there'll be a job waiting at the other end. Now here's the problem. If I've invested $5, $10, $50, or $100,000 in getting that education, counting on a job that may not exist at the other end, I am effectively a debt. I'm an indebted person. I become a debt slave. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, slavery is a long institution. It's been around since humans, probably the first or second oldest institution on the planet. And it still exists in the classic form today with people owning each other, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the economic slavery that almost all of us at some time or another have been a part of. And for me, it's one of the most insidious things because it doesn't really have a heart. Now, I'm not saying slavery necessarily has a heart in the classic sense of slavery, but there was an economic interest. If I was a slave, there would be an interest in keeping me alive and healthy because I couldn't work if I wasn't. So I was taken care of. Now with modern economic debt slavery, they don't care. Because if I get sick or die, my family has to wear it. My children, my grandchildren, who knows how far it goes. Entire communities become enslaved to debt. Now again, I'm not trying to speak ill about banking or credit or education. That's not the point. But I want you to start to frame the dynamics of what's happening in the world today so you can frame a correct strategy to be free of this, to be free of it. So this thing, unemployment, underemployment, is it getting smaller or growing? Let me answer that by saying the governments have changed the way they measure unemployment. Now, let me think. Why would they do that? Well, it's obvious. Because they want to get reelected, right? Yep. Again, no problem with people getting elected or reelected. That's their job. That's what they do. But the problem comes when you and I make financial decisions based on stuff that's just not accurate. Yeah. And if unemployment or underemployment is increasing, and as far as I can see for the future, it's gonna increase, it's not gonna come down, then we want to act accordingly. The middle class, which is the holy grail for most Western economies, is shrinking, folks. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, the bottom end is shrinking. So you got this middle class. The bottom end is shrinking with robotics, with immigrant labor that may go into a market and distort the economics, right? People work cheaper. And again, that's not a bad thing, but it's pushing from the bottom, isn't it? Taking those jobs away, valuable jobs. It's shrinking from the top because guess what's happening? You've got artificial intelligence doing jobs that professionals used to do. You've also got outsourcing. No offense to anybody that's an accountant, let's say, but I can go online and get somebody in India to do my accounting who's been trained in this law and do it for a fraction of what you might charge. The point is this middle class, the thing called a job may even disappear largely. You got to get, jobs didn't exist 100, 200 years ago. I mean, maybe 100, but not 200. Not in any great quantity. Wow, think about that. Job's something new. Serfdom. Remember that thing in the Middle Ages, being feudal system? That existed. There was slavery. All these economic systems come and go. And this one will come and go too. So let's look at this thing. Let's say you're a middle-class person, and you're thinking, well, lucky me. I'm 60 years old. I'm ready for those golden years they promised me, right? I put in my time. I went to school. I got my 40 years in. I put my 40 hours in, and now I'm ready to retire. I'm ready for the golden years. But what's wrong with that picture now? You know, I'm out of the system. I don't need to deal with that. Well, if you're like most people, first of all, you don't have a huge retirement. You may have a pension. You may have some savings. But has anybody heard of ZIRP? Z-I-R-P? ZIRP? ZIRP is what is shorthand for zero interest program, you know? Yeah, like no interest. You're not being paid interest on your money. You put your money in a bank in America, you know what they're getting for interest in a bank? 1/4%. Yeah, I don't know what it is the rest of the world, but put it this way. You got $100,000, you put it in a bank, and if you're getting 1%, you know how much you're getting a year? $1,000. Try living on $1,000 for the year. Not going to happen. So how much, just think, how much money do you need to live if you just retired or disabled or you just wanted a life outside of work? How much would you need to live now? Probably kind of what you're making. So if you're making, let's just say $50,000 a year. That may be low, maybe high. Do you know how much money you'd have to have in the bank to pull $50,000 of interest off? Do you think it would be 100,000, 500,000, a million, 2 million,
millions,
5 million? Yeah? Anybody here have a realistic chance of accumulating $5 million? I mean, really? I mean, maybe some of you have the ultimate plan. Somebody's going to die and leave you all the money. You're gonna win that big lotto in the sky, right? Oh, let me see. I'm only 45. I'll just work harder. Well, good luck on that, because I don't know how hard you're working, but I'm willing to bet you're working real hard now, and if you think you're going to even double what you make, probably not going to happen, because you know what? You probably got a lot of expenses, and I mean, are things getting more expensive or less expensive these days? More. That's the thing. See this thing called inflation? This is what can really kill. If you are looking to retire, you want to know that inflation is a silent tax. It's a tax, be real clear. If inflation is 2% a year or 5% a year, and again, how they measure it can change. I'll explain why in a minute. That will eat your $100,000 and just eat it right down to almost nothing. And you're getting no interest on nothing. And that is not golden years in my book. That's a recipe for ruin. And you may go, oh, but wait, I've got a pension. Let me share something. Two things about pensions. Number one, okay, so somebody's promising you they're going to pay you. Government, work, somebody, somewhere. But where are they going to get the money? Because when the economy slows down, taxes slow down. And when they're investing and they're only getting a percent or two on their money, how are they going to afford to pay you? They're going to run out of money. And even more importantly, when these government statistics come out and they say, oh yeah, the inflation's only 1%, we're going to increase you by 1%. Does anybody, can you honestly tell me that housing has only increased by 1% in your recent memory? No. So I'm just kind of laying this out so you can see that the old strategies are not necessarily going to work in this new economy. Are you getting that? It's not your grandfather's economy. It's not even your parents' economy. This is a new economy with new rules, new dynamics, and new strategies. You see, there are winners in the new economy, and there are definitely losers in the new economy. And my job here tonight, my deepest desire is to give you some strategies for you to be a winner in the new economy. And I can speak with a little bit of authority, not professional credentials, but having done it. Having shifted my thinking to actually standing in a place where I know how to do this, and I've done it, and me and my team, we've helped hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people successfully make this transition and thrive. And these are not necessarily people who have some great PhDs or a great background or great contacts or a lot of money or a certain way they look or a certain racial thing or a certain job history. None of that. That's not what's important in the new economy. See, the new economy doesn't run on the old rules. Isn't it true that in the old economy, all those things were important? Who do you know? Do you remember the saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know? Well, there's still some truth in that. But that's not what makes success here. So let's look at this thing called the new economy. But to get there, I want to take you back. I want to take you all the way back to the beginning of the history of money. Would that be interesting to learn? What is this thing called money? Because isn't it true that money, we all remember coins, right? We remember coins. We know these things, they're notes, they're bank notes, right? You can use these to go buy something. And isn't it also true now that we have these plastic things where you can go buy stuff with this? You don't even need the coins, you don't need the money, you just need this. And isn't it also true you can go online right now and buy stuff without any of these things? You just put a couple keystrokes in and you can buy stuff. So money's flexible. There's nothing firm about money. There's nothing locked in about money. And these new kinds of money, these cryptocurrencies, and you heard about these, Bitcoin and these things. These are new forms of money, and they're somewhat radical because they don't necessarily involve the governments. Now, why would that be important? Well, when you go all the way back, money was created by us. We created money. As a matter of fact, before money, we created credit. Let's look at how this works. So in the early days, I'm talking 10,000 years ago, there was an ice age, maybe 10, 20,000 years ago. So it was all covered with ice, and then the ice went away, and then people started showing up. And the main way to create wealth during that age was called what? Hunter-gatherer, pillage and plunder. Grab it if it moves and stop it from moving and eat it. That was pretty much how, or gather some berries or whatever. That was how people lived. About 5,000 years ago, see, that was a wealth creation strategy, right? You were faster or smarter or younger and you ate better, and that was how people created wealth. 5,000 years ago, people decided, or they discovered how to grow stuff. They actually figured I'd throw these seeds in and cover them up and come back, and there it is. And they were then able to create wealth through growing things. So they grew things, and that created wealth. And then fast forward about 2, 3, 4, 5,000 years to just a couple hundred years ago, wealth creation changed again to this thing called the Industrial Revolution. All right, the Industrial Revolution is when we suddenly discovered how to make things in these things called factories. And factories were the wealth creation engine. Now we still pillage and plunder. Some of us do better than others. We still grow things, and we still have factories, so those don't go away. But the next step, from the 1800s, say, when the factory system came, the Industrial Revolution, we moved up another 200 years to roughly after World War II, in the 1950s, more or less, we moved into a service economy. So wealth was now created by working on things, not growing things. I mean, you still get wealthy growing things. You could still get wealthy making things, but bigger money was created working on things, right? Big companies, corporations that were unimaginable grew into being. From the 1950s, just moved 30 years. Notice these are getting shorter, these time periods. 30 years, we moved in what's called the knowledge economy. The knowledge, suddenly people were making wealth, massive amounts of wealth, through what they knew, what they know, and what they understand, and what they can invent. Right? That's the 1980s, 90s. And I just want to, before I move ahead, I just want to acknowledge, during all these transitions, this thing called unemployment was brutal. It was brutal. Because how do you take a farmer and suddenly put him in a sophisticated factory, and suddenly they know overnight how to be in a factory? Well, for one thing, they're used to working on a different time scale. The factory starts at 8. You got to be there at 8 ready to work, as opposed to, do it in the right time. Obedience, punctuality, and repetitive motion, and it's not like you can just throw a switch and become a factory worker. Nor can you throw a switch and become a service person from a factory. Nor can you throw a switch and become a knowledge person. And yet they talk about, well, we'll retrain these people. Well, good luck. Especially if you're 50 or 60 years old, good luck. Or even 40. Those skills are not transferable. Now, let me get back to the timeline. We're going to move forward from the 1980s to the noughties, to 2000 and beyond. And we shifted into a brand new economy. And this is called the information economy. We're not growing things, we're mostly not pillage and plundering, we're not growing things, we're not making things, we're not working on things, we're not working knowledge, we're working information. And that's why you can get away with not having money. You can lose your wallet and still go online and do those are electronic digits. And that's where wealth is, and that's where wealth's being created. Now, you may be thinking, oh, well, that's all great, Michael Jude, but what do I do about it? I don't know anything about that. I know people do it, but I don't have a clue. Well, that's fine, because that's what we're going to share with you right now. We're going to share how you can participate in this new economy and be one of the winners. Okay? First of all, let's look at these things called FANGs. You may be thinking, FANGs? I don't have FANGs. Who is he looking at? Well, I'm talking about the FANGs, the 4 big information companies. Anybody guess what they are? F, Facebook. A, Amazon. N, Netflix. And G? Google. Okay, these are the FANGs. These are driving the world economy, stock markets, in an equity sense. They're massive, massive. The amount of wealth that these have created absolutely dwarfs anything else the planet's ever seen. Let's look at Google and Facebook, 2 great examples. The owners are gazillionaires. They're not just millionaires, they're not just billionaires. And are they older or younger? Bill Gates is pretty wealthy, but he's moving on. No, these guys are largely under 40. And they created this amazing amount of, and they're just getting started, right? Wouldn't it be valuable to know how they did it, what they did, and we can do it in our own small way. You may not want that big a notoriety, and that's fine, but wouldn't it be nice to get your piece of that pie? Yeah, absolutely, because this is the way the world's moving. You can't go back. Good luck. You want to go back? Sometimes I do. It doesn't work. It's not working. So let's look at what they do and how they do it. Now, one thing that they do successfully is that they're able to have a new strategy. Now, if my grandparents had told me this, or reverse it, if I went to my grandparents and said, here's how I'm going to get rich, and I said, you know how I'm going to get rich? They said, yeah, get an education, get a job, go 4 year, retire. I go, no. I'm going to give away stuff, and that's going to get me rich. And they go, boy, have you got a lot to learn. Let me tell you about the school of hard knocks. You don't give nothing away, right? That's what they'd say probably. What does Google do? Do they grow anything? Do they make anything? Do they work on anything? Do they even know anything? Well, they know a little bit about something. But isn't it true that they give away stuff for free? Valuable stuff. Not just any old stuff. They give you stuff you want right now, and it's valuable, and you probably used it today a couple of times. Facebook you may have used several times. You know, these guys are they're a platform. They're a platform, and what they do is they give away valuable information for free, and they figured out how to monetize it. They figured out how to get wealthy doing that. How cool is that? How cool is that? Yeah, they got a few buildings, but it's not about buildings, and it's not about, you know, employees and that. They're working smart. They understand the new economy. They help create the new economy, and they're getting massively wealthy doing it. So remember I said earlier that there were winners and losers, and it's hard for people to transition? I want to add something else into this timeline about wealth and money. You see, when these ages occur, it took 5,000 years to go from growing stuff to a factory. Were there factories along the way? Yeah, there were. I mean, you know, there were little cooperatives and guilds, and people got together and they shared work and put out stuff. So they were kind of like factories. And isn't it true that the service economy always existed in some form, but not as the dominant economic wealth creator? Yeah, there's always people working on stuff. The tinker who repaired your pots, or, you know, fixed a wagon wheel. So what we've seen now in this new economy is that there were people who understood this, about giving away stuff for free, even as early as 1950. These were the true pioneers. They understood this concept and started doing it then, and they got wealthy. They became billionaires. They became billionaires in the 50s, 60s, and 70s of the last century. So now you probably got you thinking, well, what was that? Well, let me explain how that worked and what it is. So, how many of you know that in the 1920s, 30s in the United States, there weren't really these things called department stores. They had shops, so there was a lamp shop, there was a top hat shop, there was a buggy whip shop, there was a grocery, you know, like that, little shops. And this person called J.C. Penney said, well, I'm going to create this thing called a department store. I'm going to have departments with all these little shops and put them under one roof and just pay one rent and a small amount of employees and sell stuff cheaper. Well, huge successful. Sears and Roebuck, Montgomery, you know, these are retail. They were almost made illegal. Wow, what a thought, because isn't it true that Target and Warehouse and Walmart and Kmart, these are a huge part of our economy now. Almost illegal? Why would that be? Well, that would be because the little hat maker and the dressmaker and they didn't want that. They were going out of business. But that's progress, folks. That's the way it happens. Sorry, pass a law against progress. Good luck on that. I mean, we can see shining examples of that today already, right? So what happened was, in fast forward now to the 50s and 60s, and this thing called franchising. Everybody knows about franchises, right? Something like a huge amount of our consumer dollars move through franchises today. Because you can franchise everything from a muffler shop to a panel beater, food, and all these are franchises. They were almost made illegal. Wow, how about that? So there's resistance to change. right? There's resistance. The old guard doesn't want to let go. And maybe that's their job, maybe not. But that's what happened. But in the 1950s, there was this couple of guys in Michigan, in the United States, that decided, okay, I'm looking at this retail model and I'm seeing an ineffective spot. I'm seeing where there's a waste. There's wastage here. And that wastage was this factory over here, and hundreds, if not thousands of miles away is a retail store. And in between the factory and the retail store and the customer, there's all this expense, right? You got a wholesaler and a jobber and a retailer, and you got employees and rates and taxes and buildings and advertising. You got all this expense. Let's sell from the factory right to the customer, cut all that out, which is a lot of money, by the way. I mean, you ever look at a box of soap or something and you see what it comes out of the factory and what you buy it for? It's a big difference. Let's take that money and we'll have a volunteer army. We'll get people just like us who actually will go do that bit for us, and we'll share that money with them. And they created this thing called network marketing. Although in those days they called it multi-level marketing. And so what happened was, when they discovered this model, it went kaboom. It exploded. Today it's a $200 billion a year industry. That's huge. That's bigger than some countries. $200 billion a year. Hundreds of millions of people around the planet involved in this alternative distribution network. And that's all it is. It's an alternative way to distribute goods and services on the planet. But let's look at why it's so powerful and why it's growing so rapidly. Because first of all, it's one of the newer businesses on the planet, right? Only 50 years old, 60 years old. It actually, think for a minute. So what do we normally do with our friends? Well, I know one of the things a good friend does will give me good advice, right? So let's say they know I like Thai food. And they say, Michael Jude, I know you like Thai food. There's a new restaurant that opened up down the street. It's really good. I went there. You ought to go. I think you'd enjoy it. I go, well, that's great. Thank you very much. Now let's suppose that friend was you. I went there, ate, I spent, maybe $50 or more on food. The next time you go in, is that restaurant owner going to go, well, thank you very much for sending Michael Jude down. He's now a loyal customer here. I'm going to give you something. As a way of showing my appreciation, I'm going to give you a free dessert, or I'm going to give you a coupon. Does that happen to you lately? No. Has it happened when you send somebody to the movies? No. CDs? No. Books? Anything? Not really. But that's what these guys discovered, is that we already do that in our lives, and that's what these FANGs discovered, right? Facebook, Amazon, and Google. They discovered that there's a way to give away free information, valuable information, like you just gave me about the restaurant, but they figured out a way to monetize it. They figured out a way to do what we're already doing, but to create a lifestyle business around it. Okay? So they have a platform that allows them to be hugely successful, but do we really need that? I mean, maybe some of us do, but most of us would just be happy with what? Making a good living, having time freedom, getting out of the debt slavery trap, getting out of the wage slavery trap, right? You know what I mean by a wage slave? I'll tell you, if you're a wage slave, let me ask you a question. If you stopped working today, whether you own your own business or you work for somebody else, if you stop working today, how much longer are you going to get paid? Okay? Funny question, right? Some of you may get paid a little bit longer, a little bit shorter, but you are in this side of the equation. If you could stop working today, and that money will keep coming in for the rest of your life, you have financial freedom. You've achieved what everybody wants. And let me put a little icing on that ice cream cone. Because if you not only could stop working today and keep getting your income, but you don't have to show up, you have time freedom, would that be pretty juicy? Yeah, absolutely. And the little sprinkles on top of the icing. What about if you could have location freedom? What about if they would actually make that deposit into your bank account no matter where you are on the planet? Would that be fun? Yeah. So let's look at how this thing works. Let's unpack this thing called network marketing. And let's look at how you can take advantage of it, how you can participate and create freedom for yourself, your family, your community, and possibly the rest of the world. So what they discovered is that people automatically are recommending stuff all day. And they're also telling people about bad stuff, right? We're already doing this, so it's not changing your behavior. It's just us getting free, valuable information about things and passing along to our friends. And if they act on that, that's fine. We can monetize that. And if they don't, that's fine. We go on with our lives. See how great this is that we're already doing this, and now we have a chance to monetize it. Let me give you an example. So I'm going to reverse it. So I go to Krista and I say, hey Krista, I know you like these pop-up books. You know what pop-up books are, right? The books, you open them up and something comes out. I happen to know Krista likes these. Krista, I was down at the store the other day and I saw this great pop-up book. So, you know, hey, go check it out. And she says, okay, I will. And she does. And of course, next time I go in, they don't say, hey, thanks. But in network marketing, if I say, Krista, I found this pop-up book, or I found these supplements I love. Look, it's making my gray hair go back to black. I have more energy. My immune system's better. I'm more alert. I haven't gotten sick in a year. I think you'd like it. You should try it. And she goes, okay, I'll try it. Great. How do I get it? Where do I get it? Can I get some from you? And I go, no, actually, I don't have any, but I'll give you an 800 number. I'll give you a link. I'll give you a website. You can go get it yourself. And by the way, tell them I sent you. Enough said. She goes home. She goes on her computer. She clicks. She goes. She says, oh, yeah, I like this stuff. I'll buy it. Or she calls them on an 800 number and says, I'll buy it. They take her money. They ship her the products. They provide all the customer service. I'm just, making a referral. I see Krista again after a couple days. I say, hey, what do you think? She said, oh yeah, I ordered some. I say, great, I think you're going to love it. I really think you're going to find that if you get any of the benefits I got, you're going to be thrilled. Now here's what happens. You see, unlike the pop-up books, the company says, you know what, Michael Jude, normally, if we were in a normal model, we would have had to pay to have the stuff stocked. We'd have to have a store. We'd have to have advertising. We'd have employees. We'd have theft. We'd have all these things that we don't have. We're going to give you a piece of that expense. And by the way, here is a thank you for you. Here's a deposit in your bank account. Here's a thank you. I go, hey, this is cool. I like this. I can get used to this. So I work with Krista. She gets benefits. It's all good. At the end of the month, you know what happens? That bottle's empty. She says, well, I feel younger, I look better, I'm clear. I'll stay on this stuff the rest of my life. If this is this good, you got a customer the rest of my life. And I go, wow, that's great. So she orders some more. The company sends me a thank you deposit. She orders more. Company sends me a thank you. And this can, this goes on and on. This can go on for years and years and years and years. Okay? Now, I don't want to gloss over this point because I got really excited when I really figured out what I just said. Because people will stand up often in meetings and say, you know what, I had this problem and I had it for 25 years and I started using this stuff and it cleared up. I will never be without this. I will use this the rest of my life. Now as a friend, that makes me feel really good. I did what friends do. I recommended something, she got great benefit, she's thrilled. As a business person, part of my brain, you know what it hears? Let me see now. Every time she orders, I get a thank you deposit. And she's going to order the rest of her life. I have thank you deposits coming for the rest of her life. Oh, I see. I have financial freedom. Because if I can get a few more people and those deposits grow, suddenly I have an income independent of whether I'm working, I'm sleeping, I'm on the beach, I'm doing charity work, or I'm doing that great pastime called doing nothing. I'm just doing nothing. And I'm getting these deposits regularly. Now here's where it gets even more exciting. Because Krista is going to do the same thing that any good friend will do. She's going to go to her friend and say, hey, I use this stuff. I'm feeling better. Problems have cleared up. I've got more energy, more life. This stuff's great. You ought to try it. She says, where do I get it from? Krista says, well, get it like I get it. Get it right from the factory at wholesale prices. Here's an 800. Tell them I sent you. She does. Krista's starting to get thank you deposits periodically in her bank account. Wow, how cool is that? But I also get deposits on that other person. Now this is how the network can grow. People doing what they're already doing. There's nothing different. You don't have to retrain. You don't have to go back to school to learn to do this. You're already doing it. We're going to give you a platform or a vehicle to monetize it. Now, I want to point out a couple of differences here between the old economy and the new economy. See, the old economy was a zero-sum game. Now, I don't make it too fancy, but that's kind of a technical term for a game where I win, you lose. You win, I lose. There's a pie, we divide it up. If I get a bigger slice, you get a smaller slice. Kind of like that. It's called competition. And competition's a good thing. Healthy competition. But when competition gets sort of what I call ugly, where I'm going to get more slice at your expense, that's hard. It's hard on people, it's hard on relationships, and it's hard on communities and whole societies. So there's healthy competition, and there's the other kind. Now this is a different model. The new economy is not based on a pie that there's only so many slices. In this, you want more? Great, let's build a bigger pie. This is a cooperative business model. This is more suited to human nature. We're herd animals. We like to get along. We like to give each other things. We like to contribute. We like to be contributed to. I like being nice to people. I'd choose that over being nasty. I don't want people being hard with me. I want to be easy with them, right? And I think most people are like this. So I can breathe in this space. I don't have to be worried about competition. I don't have to be worried about a lot of things that the old economy has. This is not the place or time to go into all the details, but let me just say, if you are in a job, or you're in a career, or you're looking to be in a job or a career, or you're in a retirement pension, or you're in a place where you feel stuck, you really need to take a look at this. Because there's an answer, and it's a good answer, and it's ethical and honest, and has a lot of heart, and it's a chance for you to break out of the old system and find true freedom. Find that true wealth I was talking about. Financial freedom, yes, very important. Good relationships, no, great relationships, absolutely. They're here because we're friends helping friends. Make a difference to people, absolutely. If you're recommending something that's going to help them out, you make a huge difference in their life. Right? Time freedom, absolutely. How would you like to not have to go do the old things you had to do to get the old money? Wouldn't that be great? And if not for you, how about your children? How about your grandchildren? How about your communities, friends, neighbors? Wouldn't it be great for them to have an alternative to the 40-40-40 plan? Yeah? And they probably don't have a plan B either, unless you're going to die and leave them a lot of money. They don't have that part going. They're not going to win the lottery, chances are, right? Can they really retrain for the new economy? Who wants to be a computer programmer? Anybody? Most people just can't get their head around that. So folks, we've got something here that is so valuable. It is so valuable that when I offer this to people, I offer it as a true gift. It's a gem. This is the good news. There is a way, not just out, but there's a way up. There's a way for you to have a life that's inspired and inspires others. There's a way for you to truly contribute and change the world. We are changing the world. We're changing the way wealth is created and the way wealth is lived. You see, how many of us grew up with parents where we watched how hard it was for them? I don't know about you, but my parents did a lot of work they didn't necessarily feel all that good about. I mean, I'm sure there were moments of enjoyment, but they were wage slaves. And this is no disrespect to my parents, but they were wage slaves. Okay? I don't want that for the next generation. I don't want it for this generation, but I definitely don't want it for the next generation. And if they go in that old strategy and they come out as debt slaves, they're pretty well sentenced to a life of that. and a hard life, because that thing called the middle class is shrinking, the employment is shrinking, the economy is changing. Guys, we'll never go back. We're going forward. And each of those transitions I pointed out they had winners and they had losers. There's a lot of losers. There's a lot of losers in China right now. No disrespect to China, but the people in China are still very, very, very troubled, both from an economic point of view, but also from a societal, cultural point of view. We have taken a whole group of people from an agricultural existence and tried to rush them into the 21st century, and there's social turmoil there, okay? And our economy is undergoing a similar thing. It looks different, of course. There is good news, though, folks. There's good news. There's good news for you personally. There's good news for your friends and family. Do yourself a favor. Do yourself a favor. Take a look. Take a hard look at what's on offer here. And you know what? If you look and say, this is truly not for me, then I thank you for taking a look. I thank you for being open enough to take a look. It may not be for you, but you may just pass it along to somebody else. No strings attached here. Hey, if it's for you, it's not for me here, it's for you. Give the people in your life the generosity of offering this and let them choose. Don't decide for them, oh, this wouldn't work for them. Just say, hey, take a look. I don't care if you do it or not. Here, take a look. But you take a look for you and your children and grandchildren. And if it is for you, if anything that's been said here resonates with you, take a look. I tell people, look, this is not like all or nothing. I say this is not, oh, I'm going to do this the rest of my life. It's more like a process, okay? Do your due diligence. You know what due diligence is? We call that in business. That's when you investigate, okay? You investigate. You before you make a decision, you get all the facts you can get, and then you make a decision based on these facts. Like if you wanted to buy a new car, a new house, you'd inspect it, right? You'd take the car for a test drive, wouldn't you? You say, do I fit in this seat? No, this is not my car. Or you get another car and drive it, and I liken it to this. I say, if you're test driving a car, you're test driving a business, and you get a yellow light, slow down. If you get a red light, stop. But if you start looking and you get green lights all the way, keep going. Keep going, keep going, keep going. If you're getting green lights, and only you can decide whether it's green, yellow, or red. But take an honest look. Unpack whatever thinking you've got and take an honest look. And if you see what I see, if you see that this is the ultimate transitional tool during this time from the old economy to the new economy, then you're going to be as excited as I am about this thing called network marketing and what a gift it is to all of us. So I've said a lot, but I want to leave you with one thought. I want to leave you with a thought that in my life, when was the best time to plant that tree? If I want the fruit of the tree, if I want the shade of the tree, if I want the beauty of the tree, I probably should have planted it yesterday, or last week, or last month, or last year. But if I didn't plant it, that's not possible. I need to plant it when? Today. Not tomorrow, not next week, not after I'm dead and gone. I need to actually take action. I actually need to stand in the world and say, enough, no shade, no fruit. Enough of this thing called hardship. And I actually need to take a stand and make a choice. And I would encourage you to do the same. Because I can assure you, this is not the last economic transition. There's something beyond the information economy. And that's another talk at another time. But I do want you, now that you have some knowledge, you have some understanding, you have a strategy, a plan for a way to move forward, I want you to be one of the winners in this new economy. So again, my name is Michael Jude. I want to thank you for your kind attention, and I encourage you to take action, and you can have all the success that you deserve.